which made them suffer once again. I myself have asked perhaps a couple of bigger questions, ones that are rather touchy, and I don't know how well they would be heard. But I've asked myself again, how much needs to be public? We seem to be living in an age when the disclosure of just about everything private seems to be considered a right. It is promoted. And I find that respect for privacy and reputation is something that seems to not hold a lot of weight, especially when we know the one-sided nature of accusations. Once accused, it's hard to have reputation restored. Is there really a difference between secrecy and privacy? Those are just a few of the things that have come to my mind in reflecting on our task today to say what needs release. I know that following and going back to the lament, that one of the things I learned is one begins that lament by saying, God, how could you do this to us? As if it were really God's fault. But I take that more as an expression of intimacy, kind of like if there isn't a God to whom we can be close to make those kinds of remarks and even put a little blame on, then who is there to help us? But as the lament goes on, we see that the person's heart changes a bit and that sense of personal responsibility and communal responsibility comes through. For in the 64th chapter, it says, you meet those who gladly do right, those who remember you in your ways. And after that comes more docility, more resignation, so that as the lament concludes, one can feel very much like praising and worshiping God. After all this, says the writer, will you restrain yourself, O Lord? Will you keep silent and punish us so severely? I ask that in this time of release, that the Lord will stand near us, will release us from these burdens, and will help us to heal with full awareness that we have a God who is close.
It touches me deeply to place a Quran on a Christian altar and know that I do so with great respect for both the altar and the Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of the most gracious and merciful God. And as I talk about release, actually, do you mind if I take this off? I tend to wander.
Just has to have this with it just a minute.
Oh, it's okay.
It's not complicated. It just looks complicated. Yep, this was going to fall off. Yeah. Okay.
Monitor my time.
What?
Let me watch my time. I have a sense of time.
Connected to it as well, so it's more fast.
I'm sorry, I make everything complicated. When I talk about release, I'm going to be talking about something a little different than letting go or getting rid of something. When I say release, I'm really referring to letting go of a hold that's too tight on one thing. If we hold too tightly to one thing, we cannot grasp anything else. And it's not that these things are wrong or bad, it's that everything has its right place. And sometimes we forget things in relation to other things. and be at their right place. And so I'd like to begin a very serious topic by going through a door that's a rather light-hearted door. To me, it has a message. It's from a book written by Wilbur Rees. I would like to buy $3 worth of God, please. Not enough to explode my soul or disturb my sleep, but just enough to equal a cup of warm milk or a snooze in the sunshine. I don't want enough of him to make me love a person of another race or pick beets with a migrant. I want ecstasy, not transformation. I want the warmth of the womb, not a new birth. I want a pound of the eternal in a paper sack. I would like to buy $3 worth of God, please. And I'm going to talk about 4 things, briefly, I hope, and I've asked a couple people to monitor me, because I feel so strongly about these things that I can get carried away. The first thing that I would encourage us to release our tight hold on, if we haven't already done so, many of us have, is our mental concepts, the mental boxes in which we place God. The mental constructs that we create to contain and explain the unexplainable, the uncontainable. Our mental boxes are not bad. And the restrictions are necessary because we have limited human minds. But God is the container that is so immense, it holds all our boxes, and our churches, and our temples, and our mosques, and much more. And we have to come out of our boxes, at least briefly, to recognize that. And to recognize that this mystery, this vast mystery we call God, is really behind every beat of everyone's heart. God is this mystery that beats every person's heart everywhere on the planet. The source of breath, the source of all life. We are one human family, and I believe we have to release our limited vision, which obscures that, and claim our identity as human beings who choose to express our reverence and worship of God through a particular form. And the second thing is very related. I believe we need to release or not hold so firmly to the labels and the categories that we have constructed, and then we throw other people in too, or ourselves. Categories are necessary to understand life and to function in life, but if that's the lens through which we see other people, we truly forget that behind those labels, within those names and categories, are our fellow sisters and brothers, the living, breathing, other parts of our human family that Ted so beautifully talked about. We must embrace that there is a commonality among all of us and begin to experience that in ourselves, truly. We're like cups of water floating in an ocean of love, and we spend so much time looking at each other's, the size and shape of each other's cups and our own, that we forget what's in them and what our job is here. And the third thing, again, very related. I would hope that as time progresses, we let go of our tight hold of the labels that we place on ourselves. And we see ourselves in terms of the mystery that created us, and we ask ourselves again and again, what does it really mean to be a human being, and why are we really here? I made notes so I wouldn't go off on too many tangents. we have a seriously diminished view of what it means to be a human being that is very prevalent right now. And it's based on psychological and economic theories. Remember, they're not wrong, they're just limited. They don't explain the divine nature of human beings. They explain the ego and physical nature pretty well. In Islam, we are taught that human beings are granted a divine seed that are basically good, that we have an essence that is pure and good, and an essence that has the potentiality of reflecting all the attributes of God. And we are taught that the reason we are here is to uncover that essential nature and to express it, each of us in our own unique ways. Islam teaches us, in fact, in many places in the Quran, we are called children of Adam. You use the phrase children of God. We're all children of Adam. And if we're honest and think about the story of Adam, when we come into this existence, we will all give birth to at least two natures within ourselves. We have a Cain and an Abel within us, and probably many, many other variations in between. But we have the potential for extreme ego orientation, self-serving nature, and we have the potential to model ourselves and experience ourselves as Abel, the righteous, the God-serving part, and many variations, as I said, in between. And according to Islam, we have an eternal and ever-present struggle. It's called the Great Jihad. It's an inner thing. It's a struggle to recognize these parts of ourselves and to consistently choose the able nature within us. Even if our minds and egos are fighting and screaming and want something else, to choose righteous thinking, righteous action, and love and care of our fellow human beings. And this is a struggle. And so it isn't so much what we believe as who we are, what kind of people we become. Do we nurture Cain within ourselves more than Abel? Do we nurture both? Or do we strive more and more to recognize, develop, and express the Abel within us? And I would like to read, since the Quran is not as well known, 2 minutes. Okay. A couple of passages from the Quran. Because the fourth thing I would encourage us to release is the limited understanding we have of our own faiths. They are very beautiful, they are very deep. And Islam teaches that all the great messengers of God have given us essentially the message to turn to God, to trust God, to know God, and to become, to the extent we can, an expression of God. And just to show that I'm not making this up, the Quran says, "We believe in Allah and in what has been revealed to us and what was revealed to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and the tribes, and in the books given to Moses, Jesus, and the prophets from their Lord. We make no distinction between one and another. It is one God, many messengers." This is something you will not read in the newspapers. It is in the Quran, in every Quran, everywhere. Those who believe in the Quran and those who follow the Jewish scriptures, and the Christians, and the Sabians, and there's debate over who the Sabians are, and to any who believe in God and the last day, any who believe in God and work righteousness shall have their reward. And this part is beautiful because I think it's the answer to the stress in our world right now. They will have their reward with their Lord, and on them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. If we dive deeper into our understanding of ourselves, why we're here, the immense mystery that created us and sustains us with every breath, and our faith that are trying to turn us in that direction, we will know trust, and we are promised in all the great scriptures that we will have no fear. Thank you.
Could I have this come down from the ceiling so it sort of follow me around? That's what I'm used to. It's great to be with you today. I appreciate so much the opportunity to be a part of this wonderful spot and its legacy, as well as this gathering of friends and new friends. We never really leave our spiritual tradition any more than we leave our parents. We can't get away from them. We may wrestle with it and with them. We may make adjustments in our relationship. We may expand our views, but we are forever and eternally, at least in this lifetime, we are forever a part of those people who gave us life and that religious tradition which nourished us. I grew up in a family of mixed traditions. On my father's side were Mormons. The Romneys are a strong Mormon family in Utah. On my mother's side were Episcopalians, not so strong, but just as deliberate. One bound up in the Book of Common Prayer and the other bound up in the Book of Mormon. So at the age of 15, I decided to make a compromise, and I chose the Baptist. What a choice. The one thing about the Baptist Church, however, which I continue to cherish and believe, even though many Baptists have forgotten it, is the principle of religious freedom. The soul is free to follow its own path. And it is that tenet that not only do I cherish as a part of my tradition, but I try to honor in the tradition of others. I view this day as a shift between the balance of what has been called the requirement of faith and the requirement of love. We're not here to defend our faith and its purity against other religious viewpoints. We are here to experience an obligation to live in deeper love. There is an implicit danger in such an undertaking because it will require releasing a number of propositions that we may have held the greater part of our lives. I'm not here to defend the Christian faith, but I am here to speak as one who believes that as a Christian, we are in a critical point in world history, one that demands that we learn to love each other across all the barriers of race, religion, or rhetoric. If we're going to fulfill our human destiny and bring about the age of love and light foretold in all the ancient texts, we need to change. I also speak as one who believes that my way as a Christian is not the only way, not a better way, just another way. And I speak as one who believes that there is a higher way, one that our religious systems have yet to define and demonstrate fully, and yet we catch glimpses of it. It's the way of universal love. To find that way requires a process of letting go of that which no longer works and taking on something that will take us into a bright new future. So here's what I'm letting go of, and I hope you will perhaps resonate with it. Let's give up trying to establish a Christian America.
a national community in which Christianity is the preferred religion. This has been the God of the fundamentalist, of the religious right, and it represents something we can no longer tolerate because it is neither religious nor is it right. Let's give up our idols. For some Christians, theology is their idol. Perceiving Jesus Christ as the sole mediator between God and humankind is, in my view, a form of idolatry. Such a doctrine is a human product which denies the transcendence of other religions as a locus of God's activity. We must let Jesus be who he was, a Jewish prophet whose insights and life have impact for all of us today if we are willing to consider him apart from the construct of our human doctrines. We must love our neighbor as ourselves. To make exclusive claims for our particular tradition is not the way to do that. The influence of Jesus has already extended beyond the outlines and confines of the Christian church, inspiring thousands of others by evoking feelings of reverence, joy, and gratitude. Jesus was the person who in Hebrew tradition played the same role as did the Buddha in the Indian tradition. The ground of salvation is the same in all religions, a primary contact of self with God, which leads us to a higher way of loving and caring. Let us give up leaving people out. Feminism is a new challenge in our time. As we look back at the history of all religions, we can see expressions of male-dominated cultures that have maligned and marginalized women. Yet women have continued to play key roles in religious events, even though excluded from leadership. Today, as increasing numbers of women are being called into religious vocations and ministries, outlined and ordained and recognized as pastors or rabbinical leaders, a demand for new models of ministry are emerging. Letting go of centuries of patriarchal oppression will not be easy, but it's going to happen and is happening. Let us also let go of our oppressive treatment of people based on their sexual orientation, which some have described as the last legitimate prejudice of the church, and which is systematically ripping apart Christianity today. The need for dialogue between theologians and lay people of all religions has never been greater than it is today. But what do we seek in these dialogues? I suggest that we're not searching for a universal theory or for a common source of religion or for a single God, because the layer of tradition is too heavy and we can't get away from it. Rather, I would suggest that we do what the scriptures command us to do. Together, let us take up the struggle of the poor, of the dispossessed, those who are often viewed and treated as non-persons, those who are not welcomed into our religious institutions. Within the struggle of liberation and justice, we will find a shared locus of the religious experience that will move us to a new future. The essence of our Christian faith is not in insisting that Jesus is the one and only or the best of the bunch. The essence of our experience will be in deeds of mercy and kindness, in doing what he asks us to do, to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to liberate those in bondage, to welcome those dispossessed or disenfranchised. And thus do we express the will and the nature of God, and thus do we announce, as did he 2,000 years ago, the kingdom of God is in your midst. I leave you with these words of an old rabbinical teaching which have guided me through 40 years of ministry as a Baptist minister. We agree to differ. We promise to love. We unite to serve. And it is that teaching that I think we will be able not only to close the doors on the past, but open the doors that will lead us to a bright new future with each other. Thank you.
want to warn you of something because we're going to take some time for a few minutes, kind of the in-between, like what happens in between a release and an acceptance. And then when the acceptance part of the program returns, Jamal Rahman is going to speak first. So I'm just telling you that in case you think he's Rabbi Zeri Weiss. The change is not made to put a man first. It's to honor the specific kinds of gifts which Zeri brings, which really lead us very well into our lunch. In other words, the challahs you see on the altar table before you, Jamal did not bake. So I'd like to ask Stephen Merritt, accompanied by John Raymer, to lead us in I Open My Heart. The whole title is I Open My Heart to This Moment. I suppose in some ways the real task is to allow ourselves to be present. To allow ourselves to be present right here and right now. And in this space, to honor the one who calls to each of us. And to honor that to which and for which each of us is called. The end is, I am here for peace.
Oh.
That's how it's written.
Okay. So if I forget that, you'll remind me?
You can tell them what we're talking about.
The last line of the song has changed a little bit for this occasion, so the rabbi's just reminding me that of the change, because I wouldn't have sung it that way. Sometimes I think this is actually all we need to do. Like, if we had one job as human beings to do with one another, opening our hearts is it. If we can just do that,